Welcome to Monday Night Live. My name is Derek Arden. I'm delighted to have so many live guests, so many of you watching this recording on YouTube and listening to this on the Negotiators podcast. Today's the 131st version of Monday Night Live, and today I'm delighted to have Carl Walsh. Carl is in his office in Pasadena, north of Los Angeles, and I spent 2 sessions on his Oval Table podcast, which was a pleasure for me. I got to know Carl and Doug, his colleague, and we connected and became friends. But however, I discovered that Carl had spent 3 years living in Bloomsbury Road, Kilburn, which was just about a mile from the school I went to, and which was very interesting. Carl, you were actually studying at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. I needed to get that right, not being a culture vulture. I needed to get that exactly right. And I think you were studying at UCLA when you saw the chance to become an actor and come across to the UK. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, my major at UCLA was theater. And one day I was walking through the halls and they had various bulletin boards where they would pin up announcements. And there was this stack that had been pinned. And I never went through those, but for some reason this day on a whim, I went through them and I saw that the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art was offering a 1-month workshop during the summer. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I think I'd like to do that. And so I did. That was my first introduction, by the way, to the British economy, when everything that I did was booked through, I believe they were called Richards.
Travel agent, I guess.
Yeah, they were a huge British travel company. And halfway through that month, the hotel informed me that I have to leave by the next morning because the company had gone bankrupt and I'll just have to find somewhere else to live. But that's beside the point. The point is that I went to that workshop. I got to meet many of the directors and the instructors at the academy, and I decided this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be trained. And so the following spring, I went to New York and auditioned. Out of more than 2,000 people who auditioned, they came up with 21 people, 3 Americans. Yeah, three Americans. And I started my adventure in London when I moved to the glorious neighborhood of Kilburn.
Well, congratulations. You made some good decisions. I think you chose the wrong time to join us in the UK when we had strikes, 3-day week and everything else. But
no, that was a great education. It was a tremendous education. And
well, I'm pleased to advise you the lights are still on in the UK, Carl, and I know you've been over several times since. Now, when you were over here doing this, you also got a job at the National Theatre, I think, and you were running the front of the house in 1977 when it opened, and you met, you told me, you shook hands with the Queen, you met Sir
Didn't
Lawrence
shake hands. We were on a line that she, walked by and observed you, nodded.
Okay. You met Sir Laurence Olivier, but you actually were assigned to look after Princess Margaret at the interval and ply her with whatever she wanted, and people can make up their own minds what you had to ply her with.
Well, first of all, she was fun. Margaret was fun. Or at least she was that night, and she stayed for the whole show and stayed for the party afterwards in the theater, which was great. We really appreciated that. But during the interval, my job was to take her to a room. It was like a conference room. And we had laid out for her finger sandwiches, which apparently she really liked, and a nice bottle of whiskey, which she also really liked. And I don't want to imply that she over imbibed. She certainly did not, but she did have a sip, and why not? But it was marvelous that she joined us that night, and so many people like Laurence Olivier joined us for the royal opening of, and all of Parliament and the House of Lords. It was only invited guests for that evening.
What was the show?
Let's see, we were doing Tamerlane with Albert Finney in the Olivier Theatre. And I think we were doing Blythe Spirit in the Littleton Theatre,
okay,
if I recall correctly.
That was an unfair question. We didn't rehearse that one, did we? To give you time to think it through. Good. And now, Carl, you went back to the US to become an actor, to make a lot of money, to be the Sir Laurence Olivier of the United States of America. What happened?
Well, actually, my inspiration was Peter O'Toole.
Okay.
And in fact, a funny story about that. I was 7 years old when I saw Lawrence of Arabia, and that changed my life. It's what made me want to do this. My first day at the Royal Academy, I was walking around once the building was pretty much empty, just from room to room. I wanted to get the energy of the place and just soak up the ambiance. And I came to a room where there's a cabinet on the wall, just a little thin cabinet with doors. And I opened the doors, and there's a parchment in there with a whole bunch of signatures. It turned out, I later found out, this is the big award at the Royal Academy. And I went down the signatures, and it was a who's who of British theatrical legends. And the one that really stood out for me, of course, was Peter O'Toole. I had no idea he had gone to the Royal Academy, but it was a wonderful moment for me where I finally realized, yes, I'm home. This is where I was meant to be. He started this, and now here I am.
Fantastic. What an amazing, totally amazing experience. But it's hard work being an actor in Los Angeles, isn't it? And you found it hard work.
I loved theater. I had at that time, and actually until Zoom came along, I've always had a problem with the camera. I hate that black eye. And so I was not destined for Hollywood. And also Hollywood was a really filthy business. It probably still is for all I know. For instance, I got cast through my manager. She got the job for me to play Aleister Crowley in a film. And they were doing it through different stages of his life. I was to play the young Aleister Crowley, and Orson Welles was cast to play the older Aleister Crowley. And my manager got a phone call from the producer, because in Hollywood, only the agent can do the contract. So my manager had passed the job on to my agent. The producer called my manager and said, listen, I don't want you to worry. Carl has the job. He's perfect. First of all, he looks just like him. And second of all, he's English trained. So we want him. And he said, I just wanted to let you know, though, that Carl's agent tried to sell me on a different actor.
Wow.
Because, well, they would do that because they could get a higher price for that other actor, right? So that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back for me as far as Hollywood went, that my own team would betray me like that. So I stuck with theater. I and a few colleagues, we formed our own theater company in West Los Angeles called the 21st Street Theater Company. I directed the first production. It was a Christopher Hampton play, the Philanthropist, which when I was telling Derek this the other day, I produced the whole show for $450 that I borrowed. And when I went to pay the royalties at Samuel French, because I could only pay 1 week at a time, that's how much money we had. They said, are you aware that this is the West Coast premiere of this play? And I said, no, I was not aware of that. And because of that, we got a lot of attention from the major newspapers here. It ended up being, fortunately, a howling success. The reviews were fantastic. And the theater was off and running. And from that point on, we worked entirely from the box office. We did not take donations. We felt we had to, live off of our work. And for 10 years, we did that. Did a lot of productions. I did a lot of acting, directing. I was the artistic director. And it was a tremendous experience, but it was there that I got interested in business. And that was quite a surprise to me. Much to my horror, I found that I loved business. And I could see that theater in LA was not going to get me anywhere.
Before you move on to that, you told me a story, which is a fantastic learning point for all of us in business, that you priced the tickets at $5, I think.
Correct.
And because it was $5, people thought there must have been something wrong with the show because the price was just too cheap.
Exactly. They had read these wonderful reviews in the LA Times and other papers. And so the phone began ringing for people to make reservations. They'd say, how much is it? $5. $5. What? Did you lose the cast? What happened? And that was a big lesson to us. As soon as that show was over, we raised our prices. And what I learned is that if you undervalue yourself, so will your customers, so will your buyers.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic learning point for all of us, people watching this, because certainly I know the people I mentor and coach generally underprice their services because of the imposter syndrome, and they don't feel confident enough in pricing them right, and don't make their websites and their material look the business. Yeah, thanks for that story, Carl. But you soon found yourself in Watford, didn't you?
Well, at the time I was working at the theater company, we only worked at nights, so I had a day job in a record store, which was wonderful, which I absolutely was thrilled to show up to every day. I loved selling music, and this was for a large corporate entity. They had a whole lot of stores all over the West Coast, and I became sort of de facto the classical music expert for the Los Angeles area, and they had me go around to various stores and stock their stores properly in their classical sections, because no one knew what they should put in there. So that was a great experience. And then they brought me into the corporate world, and that's where I got into the IT field. It was the beginning of the PC revolution. Nobody knew how to use the darn things. One day they threw one on my desk and said, make it talk. And so I did. And after about 6 months, they said, well, that's great. Now we want you to go through the whole company and get one of these on everybody's desk and teach them how to use it. And that was my entree into the IT world, where I stayed for the rest of my career. Well, after that, I went to C&R Clothiers, which was a men's clothing store. And then when they went bankrupt, I moved on to the Walt Disney Company. And this was another lesson I learned, which is when I was at C&R Clothiers, they decided to outsource the IT department. And I met with the people that I was supposed to be outsourced to. The idea was that I would be laid off on Friday and come back to work on Monday and continue as usual, just working for a different company, but doing exactly the same thing. And I met with them, and I didn't like them, and I don't think they liked much about me either. And they were young, and I think they were a bit bent out of joint that I didn't have a computer science degree, which who cared when it came down to actually making the machines run. And so on that Friday, when they handed me my layoff check, they said, well, we'll see you on Monday. And I said, oh, no, you won't. You just laid me off. And it was because I made that decision that I ended up at the Walt Disney Company and a whole new trajectory in my career. By the way, 3 weeks after that layoff, they were calling me up and asking me to please come back because these people had not been able to run the computers, that had not been able to print paychecks, had not been able to print invoices. They couldn't make the computers do anything. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll come in and I'll teach somebody to do it. But I've been talking to Disney and I'm going to hold out for that. And the rest was history.
So that's how you ended up as European IT director for.
Well, not IT director. I don't want to elevate myself here.
Come on, Carl, you're not modest. You're American. I've been told that I'm not American enough.
No, I was sent over to handle the store support for Europe, which was, and the corporate headquarters for our European operations for the stores was in Watford. So I spent 5 months there. I would do it worked out to like four months in Watford, 2 weeks back in LA, 4 weeks in Watford, 2 weeks back in LA, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And the great thing about that is I learned a completely different way of doing business, because Europeans do business different than we do. And so I ran into problems. For instance, British Telephone had done the communication wiring of the building. And one of the big problems that they were having was that they couldn't back up their systems on Sunday, which is when it was supposed to happen. It just wouldn't work. So I spent several Sundays in there observing, trying to figure out what the problem was. I called BT. I said, look, is it possible that you didn't use the correct cabling in this building? Did you use Cat 3 rather than Cat 5? And they said, oh no, it's all Cat 5. I said, okay, well, I'll look elsewhere. Thank you. And I spent almost every Sunday in there trying to make that thing work. I was never able to, which was a huge disappointment to me. And I took it as a personal failure. About a month later, I found out BT showed up and said, oh, what do you know? We cabled the building incorrectly. And so, whoops. And then I told you about the case where we needed a few computers for our marketing division, just desktops. And Disney always worked with IBM because IBM is a park partner, which is that means that they always have something installed in the amusement parks. So we dealt with Berlin for some reason. That's where they were located. And I called them up and said, well, you know, I need these computers. And they said, great, yeah, we'll get it to you. I said, great, when can I look for them? They said, maybe 3-4 months. I said, whoa. Do you have an alternative? I can't do 3 or 4 months. I may not even be here in 3 to 4 months. And they said, no, I'm sorry, that's it. Well, as chance would have it, a gentleman walked into the office, a day or two later. I mean, it was almost simultaneous. And he had just opened a shop around the corner where he sold PCs. And I said, and I told him what my requirements were. And he says, well, I can't get you IBM, but I can get you exactly what you want as far as the guts of the thing. And he quoted a price to me, which was about maybe 60% of the price of the IBM computers. And I said, well, fantastic. When can you get them to me? He said, would this afternoon be okay? I said, absolutely not. I'm busy. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp. And he was there. He was there, and he was my man for the rest of my time there. And I think they continued to use him after I left. Now, I've said some bad things about how business was done in Europe in those days. Let me say something good, which I thought was terrific. This was back in the 90s. The green movement was already on. And we had to follow very strict procedures, which were not difficult to do, but we had to follow strict procedures to make sure that we were green and environmentally safe and all of that, which I thought was tremendous that they were doing it, because we weren't doing it. We aren't doing it now. And when I looked into it further, because I was so fascinated by this, I realized that not only was going green not costing much money, it was creating whole industries and giving jobs to people. And that taught me a real lesson about the green movement. Certainly it can be taken too far, but I thought what was going on in the 90s in Europe was fantastic. It was the right way to do it. You were getting the job done, giving people jobs, and creating a whole new industry. Fantastic.
Okay, Carl, great. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next part. But I have to say, my wife and I bought our first house in Watford in Croxley Green for £11,250. How the world's changed since then. And it wasn't in the 1950s before someone suggests that on the and I did go and watch Watford play quite a few times at Vicarage Road, and my kids were born in the hospital overlooks Vicarage Road. But that's enough.
Well, it's a wonderful town and a wonderful area. You feel almost like you're out in the country, and the apartment that Disney put me in was in Northwood, so which is a beautiful area.
No, Northwood's in Middlesex. Yeah, it's a bit further south. Now. We have a session on fraud. We had a session on fraud 3 weeks ago, and we will be having more sessions on fraud, honesty, trustworthy, etc. You got headhunted out of Disney, didn't you, by a liquor store with
a distributor.
Distributor with all over, operated all over California and Hawaii, and you walked into and discovered a fraud immediately and had to blow the whistle. Tell us about that.
Well, we were brought in, it was a whole new IT department, and the person that I worked for at the record store company and at C&R Clothiers, he called me and said, "Gee, I'd sure like to have you over here. I need your skills." And so I did not want to leave Disney at all. In fact, it broke my heart the day I left. When I was turning in my badge and all that, I was right on the brink of tears, because I loved that company so much. But this job was offering me about an 80% raise. So, I kind of had to take it. So we went in there. We were setting up all new systems for the company, distribution systems, accounting systems, all of that. And the main buyer for the company was bringing in a secretary, and he needed a computer for her, a desktop. I said, "Great." That was my budget. And so I said, "Great, I'll get that for him." And I got a call from him saying, No, don't worry about that, Carl. I'll get the computer. I said, "Well, comes out of my budget. Shouldn't I, be the one getting it?" And he says, "No, don't worry about it. I'm a vice president. Don't worry about it." So, okay, fine. Well, I finally got the bill for the computer, and I'll tell you, that desktop could have run the Pentagon. And it cost like it. And so right away I went, "Oh, wait a second. I smell a rat here. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Why would he do that? Unless he was just a complete idiot and got sold by the salesperson, which he was not." And so I brought that up to the CIO, and we began looking at things. And as we put the systems in place, we realized that the systems they had been running on, certain holes in the system had been engineered in. And what we found basically was that the whole C-suite, all the executives were on the take. They were skimming money out of there. Well, we plugged the holes with our systems, which made them furious, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And the chief of operations there went to the owner and said, you know, these IT people, they really don't know what they're doing. I don't know where you found them, and they cost too much. Put me in charge. I'll straighten them out. And so the owner, who didn't know how to run a business, put him in charge, and he basically turned the lights out, shut down the department, because he liked it better the way it was, which I'm sure he did. About a year and a half later, I heard that they were on the brink of bankruptcy. Now, you have to understand that the way the alcohol laws work in the United States, it creates a de facto, shall we say, a monopoly in your area. So you pretty much own the state you're in. So we owned California, we owned Hawaii, and you're selling alcohol. If anyone buying alcohol in a market, a bar, a restaurant, it came from our warehouse, right? Wow. That's a lot of money. And the profits on alcohol are huge. How do you go bankrupt with a monopoly? How does that work? And it happens through theft, of course. That's exactly how it happens. And so that was a big lesson. And the reason I was sort of onto it is a previous company I had worked for did go bankrupt, and it was because the owner was stealing too much money. He stole more than the company was could sustain. So I had seen it before.
Well, there's a number of people on here who've had to deal with that, including myself, and it's very interesting, isn't it? And very stressful at the time as well.
Oh yeah,
very stressful. Now you run the property company with your family. You do the Oval Table podcast, which you kindly invited me on. You speak all over. Also
Gary and Randall, who are here. They've been on the show as well.
Fantastic.
And in fact, Randall's episode, which was very interesting, is still our #2 most streamed episode, and yours, Derek, is still in the top 5.
Well, I'm proud to be in the top 5. I need to sort Randall out, don't I? He's smiling at me with his cowboy.
Yeah, I thought I'd get a little friendly competition going there.
Yeah. Carl, tell me, why is it called the Oval Table? Because your president was a naughty boy on it, or did you have other reasons?
Well, the reason was round table is overused. Thanks to King Arthur. And in fact, if you do a search of podcasts, so many podcasts use round table in their title. Now, what we were doing when we started this, we were working off of the principles that had been laid down by Douglas Bowers, a co-host, and he has a book out as well. And the principles were that there are 7 basic business personalities, and you should have them sitting around the table. There we go. There it is. We are alpha dogs. There are basically 7 different business principles. When you're making important decisions in a business, somebody representing each of those personalities, if depending on the size of your company, but if you have it, they should be at that table, and there should be no one at the head. And it should be a place where everybody speaks freely. It should be a place where people can talk about what's wrong, because they're the people in the trenches. They should know. They absolutely should know. And if you have a project that you want to create, you need their input on how to do it. And each of these different personalities has input and information coming from a completely different area. And so when you put them all together, you tend to end up with a really solid plan. It's sort of something that we did at Disney, where every 2 weeks we would have a meeting with all the departments. This was our meeting in IT, all representatives from all the departments. We would talk about all these systems that we were developing. They were on a list, on a prioritized list, and we would sit there and hammer out, okay, what's the most important thing we need to do now? What's number one? And we would prioritize with their agreement and their input and ownership. We would then set those priorities out. Now, some things never reached number one. They never got done, but the people understood why. They totally understood that the company needs this now. And there might be an ancillary system. Well, we need this system now, and we need this in order to do that. So those are the ones that would get done. The result of that was that we never got blowback, ever, from the other departments, because they understood what we were doing, they understood why, and they had been part of the decision-making process. And that's a perfect example of our concept of an oval table. Brilliant. In any business.
Brilliant. Well, Carl, we're nearly come to the end of the interview. I've just got a couple of slides that I want to share with the audience. You probably don't want me to share them, so let's see what comes up on the screen. I didn't do a very good job there. There's nothing on the screen now, so people need to. That was you, I think, at the Royal Academy of Arts.
Right. If you go to their website now. If you go to their website now and look up past graduates, that's me on their website.
You clearly saw yourself as a superstar actor at that point.
Well, I call that now my porno picture. Yes.
Now everybody wants to know what you were doing here. Were you advising our Prime Minister on his speech recently, or what's that all about?
Well, no, actually, this was at the Gielgud Theatre in the West End in 2018. He was foreign minister at the time. I had followed his career since he was mayor of London, and I thought he was a tremendous character, really interesting guy. And so at the interval, my wife and I, Vilma, on the right there, we went up to him, and I just wanted to say hello and how interesting I found him. He, as I say, he was foreign minister at the time. I told him he should quit being a foreign minister and make a run at prime minister. No, but 2 weeks later, he did in fact resign as foreign minister. I can tell you right now, politics aside, and I don't want to get into that. I'm an American. I have no skin in the game, and I totally embrace that. But I will say he's a marvelous character. He was so nice to us. I kept trying to back off and give him his space, but he kept talking to us. And here's something that Susan Rowan really gets at, and Patricia Fripp as well, which is, when you're having a conversation, ask questions about the other person, make it about them. And that's precisely what he did. And he wanted to dig into my background, my time at the Royal Academy. He asked me what I do now. I said, I'm a professional speaker. And he said, oh, I wish I could do that. And I said, well, you do pretty well. You do pretty darn well, as it is. And he's just a marvelous raconteur and a guy I would love to spend an evening at the pub with.
Carl, thanks very much for that fascinating insight. Will you stay on and answer a few more difficult questions that I'm sure the audience have got for you when I switch the recording off?
May I mention one more thing, Derek?
Sure.
And that's about the Queen. At the royal opening of the National Theatre, it was the first time I saw her close up. And it was that night. It was, and by the way, it was actually on my birthday too. I thought it was awfully nice that the Queen attended my birthday. But I finally got it, what the monarchy is all about. And it clicked in. I went, oh, I get it. It doesn't matter who's the prime minister. It doesn't matter who Parliament is, how much you love them, hate them, whatever. What you look towards is the Queen. And that's the importance of the monarchy to me. I kind of wish we had one here. Now, of course, she has no legislative power or anything, but as an icon, as someone to look to, as a symbol, she's fantastic. And I think it's a very valuable institution. I wish the family was better behaved, but hey, you look to the Queen. And I know there's probably large royal family feelings, but as an institution, I think it's great. I think you have something really special there that is worth saving. I really do.
Carl, thanks very much. I think that almost everybody respects the Queen in this country totally for what she does. We'll face whatever we face after she's passed on. She's done a tremendous job, and we're celebrating her 70th anniversary of being on the throne this year, which is absolutely amazing. Carl Walsh, thanks for joining us. Can I ask everybody to give you the usual round of applause in the Monday night live way? And thanks for joining us. If you're watching this on YouTube, please join us live. If you're listening to the Negotiators podcast, if you've got any questions, email me, contact Carl on LinkedIn, and see you next week. Thanks for joining me.